the Panthers as a whole from the league overall potential of the team for 2 straight years. So we'll see how it's handled this upcoming offseason. Before we do that, we got one final game to cover. Thank you. Next Saturday, we'll have the post-game analysis. Carter, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up here at Accuracy? Carter, I'm starting off saying it went. Who would have thought it? 20 is sitting here at Accuracy. See if this guy.
All right. Welcome, Pitt fans. Thank you for tuning in so late. After a big time Pitt win, the Panthers took down Boston College at Acrisure Stadium. I'm looking out on the field right now from one of the radio booths. Exciting night. I don't think you can put it any other way. I mean, look, this season's been a slog. I don't think anyone can deny that. This has been difficult on just about, everyone within the program. I mean, just, from the jump, when they started to face real competition, it felt like this was going to be a long season. It ended up being a long season. And I think you pull out a win like this on senior night and you give yourself some, I don't know. You don't even have to worry about the future in a win like this. I think all you do is take this moment, you bottle it up, and you say, for at least one night, we get to enjoy something. It's been so long since that Louisville game, the last time that we got to celebrate something, to write positive things about this team, to just enjoy a win. I mean, as a reporter, as a journalist, you don't root for anything. You don't root for the team that you cover. You don't root for them to win, but things do tend to be more interesting when they win. And you root for interesting, and losing relentlessly, and I mean even winning relentlessly, that stuff's not interesting. So Pitt's given us plenty of interesting this year, and this was certainly one of those interesting nights from top to bottom. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from the jump is just that this was fun. This was interesting. This was not a particularly clean game. It wasn't pretty, but it was cool to see people stick by this team, to see this team stick by each other, and to grind out a win in the way that they did, and to do it with a couple of their stars who had been waiting to break out, do so in this game. We'll get to a couple of them, but I think we got to lead off with Rodney Hammond, a career day for him. He ran for, let me pull up his stats right here. Excuse me. Let me get my full book here. Rodney Hammond, 15 carries. That's his most all season. That's his most, I believe, in his career. I'm pretty sure. He also ran for 145 yards. That's a career high. A touchdown. An average yards per carry of 9.7. I, again, don't have his numbers directly in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's a career high as well. I'm pulling them up right now. Yeah, that is easily a career high. His previous career high was 7.6 yards per carry, and he only did that on 5 carries against Louisville last year. He was dominant, and he I think proved something that that maybe we thought we knew about Rodney Hammond, that we had hoped to see from him as he took on this lead back role this year, and that's watching him wear down a defense. That was the best thing, I think. First of all, that he got the opportunity to do that, and then he actually did it. He followed through on being the kind of power runner that I think he had a reputation for, that I think when you watch him play, you thought he was. And he finally got the opportunity for the first time this year to be a bell cow back, to wear down a defense. And Boston College, I mean, I looked it up. They are not anywhere near one of the top rushing defenses in the ACC, let alone the country. I mean, they give up a lot of yards. I mean, you saw what they did last week against Virginia Tech. It's tough sledding for them, but Rodney Hammond took full advantage of it. I thought he used his speed, his power, his agility at different moments in this game to break free and to create long runs. He gained yards in chunks. I mean, I said, 9.7 yards per carry, and that tells you a lot of the story. But I mean, a lot of the most of his runs were, 4, 3, 14. He was picking up yards in chunks, and then he had a couple of big ones to really put up the gaudy numbers. But he was gaining positive yards with each run. He wasn't getting stuffed. I don't think he ran for a negative gain at all today. I mean, part of that's the offensive line too. They played really well. Excuse me. But he took full advantage of the holes that were there, and it was just refreshing to see, after the way this season has gone, after the way the carries have been distributed, to watch Hammond be who he is, to be a guy who runs with power, who runs with speed, and just watch him be a featured back. I mean, the the split in carries between him and Daniel Carter and Sebo Flemister. I mean, I pointed it out. We were yelling about this in September. We were yelling about this in October. I mean, it made no sense why you would keep Rodney Hammond at the top of your depth chart and then not use him like a starting running back, like a bell cow back, especially given the way that the passing offense struggled. I couldn't understand it. And I still can't understand why it took us so long to get here, to get to this moment where Hammond was actually a featured back. But hey, I'm glad we're here. I'm glad they figured it out. And I hope it keeps going next week against Duke, because we'll get to this in a second, but Nate Yarnell is probably going to start, according to Pat Narduzzi, against Duke. But it seems pretty certain that he is, if you're reading between the lines a little bit. And Duke has one of the better pass defenses in the country in terms of talent. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm not sure about that. But I know that they have some dudes in that secondary. Nate Yarnell is going to need a strong running game to support him like it did tonight. So Rodney Hammond's going to be big in that game as well. If he can keep up what he's doing, if they can give him the opportunity, please, that's just all I'm asking, is for the opportunity for him to prove that he can carry this team offensively like we thought he could coming into this season, then the Panthers are going to be in good shape. I think this offensive line is gelling, and once you find a featured back like they did tonight in Hammond, I think there are big things ahead for this team, and things will start to open up for this offense. Moving on a little bit, we got to talk about Nate Yarnell, guy making his first start of the season, just the second start of his career. And I don't want to say this is his first real start. I mean, he started last year against Western Michigan, but that was kind of a completely different animal. It was a spot start. Pitt was dealing with some injuries. He went into that game and only threw 12 passes. A lot of them were short. He did have a couple nice deep balls, but they leaned heavily on the running game with Israel Abanikanda, I think ran for like 130 yards or something in that game. But, Yarnell played well in that game, but he did his job, and his job was pretty limited. He did not have to do much to help the Panthers win that game. This time he did. This time the full playbook was at his disposal. This time he had much more put on his shoulders, and he delivered. 11 of 19, 207 yards, 1 touchdown. Also ran 5 times for 24 yards and a touchdown. He was cool. He was calm. He was collected. He knew what to do in the pocket. He knew when it was right to stand in there and take the protection that his offensive line was giving. And I'll give a quick shout out to the Pitt offensive line. They were outstanding pass blocking. And then obviously they opened up holes for Rodney too. You felt like that was a slow burn, but they played a really, really great game tonight. One of their best of the year. And you can see what continuity does for a group like that. I mean, I've been talking about it all year. Like, just as long as this group gets to stay together a little bit longer, as long as they as long as they get the chance to actually play together, they're going to get better with each time. I mean, that's just true about any offensive line. They need to have some continuity with each other, to understand how to play with each other and how to block with each other and just how to work with each other. And I felt like that was on full display tonight when you've got guys like BJ Williams back in there, when you got Cradle playing the right guard, when you got your 2 tackles that are set, and then Terrence Moore obviously anchoring things from the center. Once they figure out those guard positions, they were able to really open up a lot. But Yarnell was really impressive. We got to qualify it though, because this is the 3rd time this season that I've watched a Pitt quarterback make their starting debut in blue and gold, and been really impressed. The first 2 times, the feeling I had walking away from Christian Vayer's first start, from Phil Jerkovic's first start, was that Pitt had their quarterback of the future, that they didn't need to worry, that they can settle on a guy and that they were ready to rock with him. And then, the rest of the season happened. Then they played a second game and a third game and a fourth game, and things deteriorated really quickly. So, um, I'm not saying I'm putting no stock into this game because, like I said, Nate Yarnell looked good. He showed a lot of great traits. He has a nice arm. He makes good decisions. He's careful with the ball, and he's much more mobile than I thought. That I didn't expect him to kind of run the way that he did. Not just on those design runs, on those quarterback keepers, but also the way he just kind of moved around in the pocket. Those kind of subtle moves that buy you a little bit of extra time when a pass rush is coming. He had a really nice pocket presence, and he was much more mobile than I thought. But I mean, I thought Christian Veilleux's arm looked great against Louisville, and it did, but didn't look so great in the games after. I thought Phil Dracovic looked great with his legs in particular, and I thought his arm looked good enough against Wofford, and then all of a sudden it didn't. So do think you got to put you got to pump the brakes a little bit on Nate Yarnell. You got to wait till you see what you have when they play Duke, because that is also a winnable game. I mean, it's a winnable game. It's not one that I would pick them in, but that's a team that is certainly, I don't want to say declining, but they are not playing as well as they did at the beginning of the season. It's still a tall task, but I think the Panthers have what it takes to at least compete with them. So I think you don't look at that game anymore as, we're throwing Nate into a game like Christian was in against Notre Dame, where they were just completely overmatched, or even Florida State, where the talent disparity and the quality disparity was so large that you couldn't really feel like you could judge a player accurately. I mean, this will be mostly even footing for Yarnell, and so he's going to be able to I feel like prove a little bit, and really give Pitt some idea of what it's got moving forward, and what it's got in Nate Yarnell maybe next year and beyond. I think it's interesting that this is the one homegrown guy, Dracovic and even Veilleux. I mean, Veilleux feels a little bit more homegrown just because he's still relatively young. Didn't play a whole lot at Penn State, but he's still a transfer. I mean, Nate is a guy who has been here for, this is now his third year, and Pitt's had their hands all over him. They have kind of created him into the quarterback that he was. So I think that gives them a level of trust in him that they might not have had in Veilleux and Dracovic, but I think it also gives them a willingness to look long term and to think about what this guy could be as a long term, multi-year starter. They really like him, I think, just as a person and obviously as a quarterback. But I think they appreciate his personality. I think they feel like they know him, and that they are just excited to work with him in that sense. And he knows everything. He feels comfortable. I mean, he looked comfortable there. I mean, they put so much more on his plate on the field in this game, and he still looked the same way he did against Western Michigan. He didn't blink. I think that was, really the most impressive part, was just the confidence that he showed, top to bottom, being able to make plays on all three levels of kind of the long, short, and intermediate passing game. His wherewithal to throw the ball away when something wasn't there, his ability to avoid turnovers and interceptions, is just general command of the offense, I thought was really sharp, and was reflective of a guy who's been here in the system for a long time. Moving on a little bit, shifting to the other side of the ball, I think we definitely have to talk about Dayon Hayes first, and then the work of the defense as well, because they were outstanding, I thought, against one of the better rushing units in the ACC, and this was a team that was, quite frankly, embarrassed. Last time out, defending the run, they just couldn't do it against a converted tight end running Wildcat. It was really an embarrassing performance, but they stepped up in a big way. They held Boston College. Excuse me, let me get the numbers up real quick. But they held Boston College to 166 rushing yards. That's well below their season average, on 44 attempts, under 4 yards per carry, no rushing touchdowns. They really got after Thomas Castellanos. They sacked him, I want to say, they didn't technically sack him. I think they credited a bunch of those to Rush, but they put a ton of, they have 5 quarterback hurries. They really put a ton of pressures on Thomas Castellanos, who's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country, if not definitely in the ACC. And leading the charge was Deion Hayes. He was absolutely relentless. This was easily his best game this season. It might be the best game of his career. It's up there with that 2-sack game. I think it was 2 sacks against Miami in the regular season finale last year. But yeah, he was outstanding and unblockable. He had 6 total tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 pass breakups, and then an additional quarterback hit. He was just great. And I mean, this was the Deion Hayes that I think we'd been waiting for, that we expected throughout this entire season. We expected him to play like this every time, and it was a bit of a slow burn. He was close a lot this year. He was within inches, it felt like, of getting those sacks, but he just couldn't grab on, couldn't finish those plays. But tonight he finished those plays. The entire defense finished those plays. I mean, the tackling was so much better tonight than it has been since, I mean, for as long as I can remember. I mean, I can't, I don't think there's been a better tackling performance by this defense this season. And Hayes exemplified that, I think, as well as anyone on this defense, just finishing plays when that had been such a problem in the past. They wrapped up, they finished. I mean, for the most part this season, I feel like Pitt has been in the right places, especially defensively against the run, thinking about that specifically, that they had been in position to make plays and just didn't do that last little bit that they needed to finish it off, to finish off the sack, to finish off the tackle for loss, to finish off the stop that would have saved a touchdown or kept a team out of the red zone or field goal range. And tonight they made all of those plays. Boston College broke a few long runs, but this defensive performance didn't feel anything quite like, what the Panthers had, given up in the past. There were 5, quote unquote big plays according to the stat broadcast, but none of them were longer than 14 yards. That's really good. I mean, that really speaks to the development and I think the growth of the secondary, their ability to be better tacklers, and just the defense as a whole. I mean, first of all, they were stuffing runs early, and then also when runs broke contain or got into the secondary, they weren't they weren't allowing big gains to turn into touchdowns. They weren't allowing first downs to turn into touchdowns. They were stopping them short of that. And that was a huge difference in the game. I mean, we can look up Boston College's red zone stats and they were not very good. They had 2 red zone attempts, only scored on one of them, and it was a field goal. They forced a turnover in the red zone. I believe that was PJ O'Brien's pick on the 2-yard line. We can mention him too. He was fantastic and a guy who's, I think, growing with every game. He's playing much more in control. He's a really good pass coverage guy, but still finding ways to use his energy and his enthusiasm and playing with emotion while kind of under control. I think the D-line and the secondary, the safeties in particular, really led this game defensively for Pitt. So Hayes and O'Brien, the 2 kind of MVPs of the night. But I thought Donovan McMillan played a good game. I thought Javon McIntyre played a really good game as well. I mean, the linebackers were solid like they'd been all season. It was a pretty good team effort. And I think you look forward, and I mean, you look at defensive end, Sammy Okunlola got his first start of the season, of his career, I'm pretty sure today, and had a sack and a tackle for loss. You look at the linebackers, and that group has been solid all year, and there's guys who can come back. I mean, outside of Shane Simon and Brandon George, I think all of those guys are eligible to return, and probably will. I mean, cornerback's going to be a question, but I think MJ Devonshire has a year that he can burn and he could come back, and that gives you a huge lift alongside Ryland Gandy probably rising up through the ranks. And the safeties are your safeties for at least next year, if not another year moving forward. So this is a good note. I would love to see them continue and end on a really high note against Duke. But I think there's tons of stuff to build on, especially given that Deion Hayes openly declared to us that he's coming back next year. So a lot to build on. I think one more thing I want to point out before I go was that I thought kind of the stat of the night for Pitt was uh, only 4 penalties in all for 22 yards. I mean, that is huge. Huge, huge, huge. I mean, they got some help from the refs. I mean, the refs really let both sides play physically, especially in the secondary, and that plays to Pitt's strength. But numbers don't lie. And 4 penalties for only 22 yards, especially coming in as one of the most penalized teams in the ACC. That's huge for Pitt, and that means a lot for them. And that's part of what helped kind of lift them to a victory today. So, with that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on. I mean, we'll be back tomorrow with a post-game report about the basketball game. Pitt takes on Jacksonville at the Pete. I'll be back to break that down. Hope you'll all join me there to break down that game and talk a little bit about it. Bring your questions. We'll have more reporting from this game and that basketball game at InsideThePanthers.com. So make sure to like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/at Inside the Panthers, and then read all our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. Happy to talk a win with all of you, and I hope you'll join me next time on the Inside Pitt post-game report. And until next time, I'll